of you. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. We're going to spend some time today talking about a new book. But just before we do so, I did want to make note of the fact that today Representative Trey Gowdy convened the House Benghazi panel with opening statements by him and by the Democratic leader there as well as then some opening statements by Secretary of State, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and then cross-examination. You know, in his opening statement, though, Trey Gowdy asked 10 questions, and tomorrow on Point of View we'll try to see how well these hearings answered some of those. Here they are real quickly. Why were there so many requests for security personnel and equipment, and why were those requests denied in Washington? Why did the State Department compound in Benghazi not even come close to meeting the proper security specifications? What policies were pursued in Libya that required a physical presence in spite of the escalating violence? Who in Washington was aware of the escalating violence in Libya? What precautions, if any, were taken on the anniversary of 9/11? What happened in Washington after the first attack, and what was the response to that attack? What did the military do or not do? What did our leaders in Washington do or not do, and when? Why was the American public given such divergent accounts of what caused these attacks? And why is it so hard to get information from the very government these four men were representing and serving and sacrificing for? So lots of questions remain. I'm not sure all of them were answered today or will be answered even at the end because there seems to be some stonewalling, but we will get into that conversation tomorrow. In our weekend edition, we have quite a roundtable of guests that will help us sort through that and many other issues in the news. But today, wanted to focus on this new book, Messy Grace, How a Pastor with Gay Parents Learned to Love Others Without Sacrificing Conviction. It is endorsed by a variety of individuals, including Jack Graham, pastor of Prestonwood Baptist Church, and many other people that have been on this program, like Jim Daly and Darrell Bach, as well as Daniel Aiken and Brian Carter, Scott Ray. You go down this long list of individuals that we have interviewed, as well as people that have been in studio, people like, for example, Sean McDowell and others. And so, again, we wanted to give you a chance to hear from him and really give you a chance to think through this very important issue. Caleb Kaltenbach is the lead pastor at Discovery Church in Simi Valley, California. He speaks widely on the issues of faith, reconciliation, and sexual diversity. He attended Talbot School of Theology, which is connected to Biola University, and is finishing up his Doctor of Ministry degree at Dallas Theological Seminary. He's been on a number of different radio programs and joins us now by phone. Caleb, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be part of it.
One of the things I might just mention is we have not only information about you and your book and your website, which I think people are going to find very helpful, messygrace.com, but I've also posted a video that I would encourage people to watch, and our listeners know the drill. Always encourage them to watch the video. It's a little less than 3 minutes long. They get a chance to get to know you, hear a little bit of your story, but I would encourage you then to take that video, click that share button and put it on your Facebook page or your blog or something of that nature. This is just a great opportunity for you to expose more people to this very crucial issue, and especially the need to balance truth with grace, our biblical convictions with our biblical compassion. But Caleb, I guess the first thing we need to do is tell your backstory, growing up in this home where your parents divorced and then they came out of the closet. Tell us more if you might.
Sure, absolutely. And, please feel free to interrupt and ask questions, or if I leave something out that you want to know. First of all, both my parents were professors in Columbia, Missouri, teaching subjects like philosophy, law, rhetoric, and English. And when I was 2 years old, they divorced, and they both came out of the closet. My dad never had a monogamous partner, but he ended up staying in Columbia, Missouri, and had friends. And my mom found a woman named Vera, and they were together for probably, I would say, 22 years. And they moved to Kansas City. And my whole life, I was going back and forth between Columbia and Kansas City. And I'm still a Chiefs fan, although it's hard to admit it right now. But I ended up being raised in the LGBT community and the gay and lesbian community my whole life. And my dad, as I said, he was a little bit more quiet. He came out to some people. I didn't find out about his orientation until later on. But my mother was very politically active. She joined the board of directors for the Kansas City chapter, area chapter of GLAAD. She took me with her to parties and campouts and pride parades and clubs, and I was just raised my whole life in this community. And I saw how some Christians treated people like my mom, especially in this one gay pride parade I remember marching in. When I was in elementary school, there were these Christians holding up signs and saying things like, God hates you, and spraying them with water and urine. Now, I understand now that, I mean, obviously not all Christians are doing that, and especially in the 80s, I think that the extremism of people like my mom in these events probably drew the extreme Christians, or the Christians on the fringe, right? That don't represent all of us, and they would come and they would do these things. But my mom used this as an opportunity to tell me, this is what Christians do. They hate people. They hate gay people. And if you want to be a Christian, this is what you have to do. And I continued watching people in my mom's community in the 1980s die from AIDS. And it was difficult. It was very difficult to see how Christians treated their kids who were, quote-unquote, gay. Not all of them were, but some were. But in the 80s, they were kind of lumped in that environment. If they had AIDS, and they would ignore them. And again, by the time I got to high school, I just really didn't like Christians. And I ended up going and joining a Bible study that I was invited to with a bunch of other high school students to learn. I mean, I thought I would go in there and pretend to be a Christian and try to disprove the Bible. My first time going into a Christian's house, it was really weird, Kerby. I mean, I just remember walking in there, and you got to think to yourself, I'd never really been in an evangelical Christian's house, and walking in, I'm like, why do they have pictures of sheep and lions on the wall?
That's so good.
This is, yeah. And I'm thinking we're going to sacrifice a chicken downstairs or something, and we go down there, and it's a bunch of high school students, all of us together, and we're taking turns reading from 1 Corinthians, and I'm in 1 Chronicles. And everybody's reading these nice verses from Paul, and then I read a verse about somebody getting impaled with a sword. And they said, "Where are you, Kalen?" I don't think that's Corinthians. I said, "Well, I'm in 1 Chronicles." And they said, "Well, that's the Old Testament." And I said, "Old one, so I guess there's a new one then. There's a updated 2.0." And I kept on going back. Yeah, I kept on going back, and here's what I learned. I learned that God had expectations for living, and I learned that Jesus was not like the extremist Christians. And I started really liking Jesus and getting to know Christians and learning that not all Christians were like this. And so I changed my view on sexuality, the view that I still hold today, where I believe that sexual intimacy is designed by God to be expressed in marriage between one man and one woman. And I became a Christian. And I went to a youth conference with this new church, and I gave my life to the Lord in this youth conference.
Very good. Let me take a break because I have one of those mandatory breaks coming up. We've got you as far as to the cross, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And might just mention the forward is by an individual we've interviewed quite often, Kyle Eidelman, and they were actually on staff together and actually encouraged Caleb to write this book. So we're going to take a break, continue the story, and talk about messy grace. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
How bad is the economy? Many people believe it is still in bad shape. Others don't see a problem. They point to a low unemployment rate, record corporate profits, and a booming stock market. The difference in perspective is explained in a recent column on why this feels like a depression for most people. It begins with this simple observation. Everyone has seen the pictures of the unemployed waiting in soup lines during the Great Depression. When you try to tell a propaganda-believing, willfully ignorant, mainstream media-watching, math-challenged consumer that we're in the midst of a greater depression, they act as if you've lost your mind. During the Great Depression, there were as many as 12 million Americans unemployed. These were the men pictured in the soup lines. Today, they are essentially invisible. There are 46 million Americans in an electronic soup line. That 46 million are on food stamps and are hidden from our view. Let's look at it another way. There are 251 million Americans of working age and about 149 are employed. That means that only 59% of Americans of working age actually work. This is a much lower percentage than it was during the Great Depression. The author concludes that for the average American family, the U.S. economy has been in recession since 2000, with the Greater Depression arriving in 2008. Although the working age population has grown by 40 million since 2000, only 12 million jobs were added during that time. Most of these new jobs are in the government-controlled health, education, and social services sectors. Millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs disappeared during that same period. That is why it feels like a depression for so many people. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Provident Films, Woodlawn, the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city. Woodlawn, in theaters now.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
New book out called Messy Grace, How a Pastor with Gay Parents Learned to Love Others Without Sacrificing Conviction. Caleb Kaltenbach is with us, and the book is published by Waterbrook, and about 200 pages, great testimony, but also just some great insight into how to interact with individuals of the LGBT community as well as other individuals as well. So, Caleb, we actually got you saved, but let's finish the rest of the story, because you had really had a jaundiced, rather negative view of Christianity, and now you find yourself as one of those Christians.
Yeah, I found myself as one of those Christians, and I had to go tell my parents that I became a Christian, changed my view on sexuality, and wanted to be a pastor. And if you can imagine it this way, it was very difficult. Imagine a gay teenager coming out to his Christian parents. I was a teenager coming out as a Christian to my gay parents, all three of them. And so their response was basically to disown me for a while. And they told me that I was disowning them, but it was actually the other way around. I spent nights over at people's houses, friends' houses, and slowly I was able to go back home. But I just learned that knowing the truth about who God is and who Jesus is helped me to love my parents all the more.
Yes. And
love them in a new way. And so I went to Bible college in southern Missouri, and ended up moving to Los Angeles, and was on staff at a church for 11 years called Shepherd of the Hills, also called Shepherd Church. And while I was there, I got married, had kids. I have an 8-year-old son now, 6-year-old daughter. And from 2010 to 2013, we moved to Dallas, Texas, to go pastor a church to your neck of the woods. So I remember listening to you. And when we were there, both of my parents ended up moving down to Dallas to be closer to our family. And it was pretty incredible because my parents, I had no idea that they even really wanted to be close to our family at that point. My mom's partner had died from cancer, and she refused treatment, and I went to go share the gospel, and she wouldn't have it. And so she died without Christ unless something amazing happened, which I know some of the times in the last hour you never know, but I don't rest my hopes on that kind of stuff. But my mom and dad moved down and wanted to attend the church that I was preaching at, despite knowing what I, believed. And it was incredible. When they started coming to my church, the people in my church just were very kind and loving towards them. And
yes.
It's a great church, and integrated them into the community there. And in the summer of 2013, we moved to Simi Valley to go pastor Discovery Church, where I'm at now. And 2 weeks before we left, both of my parents gave their lives to the Lord, and they trusted Christ. And they are following Jesus. They're not in same-sex relationships. And there's still baggage. I mean, I don't think there can't be baggage with all that, but, that's personal, and that's between us. But knowing that they're in a place where they love God and they see Jesus kind of makes everything worth it.
You open the book by telling the story, which I think you even allude to a little bit in the video that people can watch, Sunday morning, September 2012, and that is, of course, your parents are in the church, but you're going to talk about the whole issue of different lifestyles and all the rest, and so that is one that's a little more supercharged, because it's one thing for you to speak on the issue of homosexuality. It's another thing to have a family member in the audience. I have a family member that's a homosexual. My wife dated a young boy that eventually died of AIDS. So, that hits me the way it obviously hits you. But I can't imagine that if both of my parents were homosexual sitting in the audience while I'm going to preach, that kind of raised the ante a little bit, didn't it?
Well, it did, and I wanted to go back to Caleb from a year earlier who planned that sermon and go punch him in the face, who thought it was a good idea. But, it was kind of nerve-wracking because, first of all, it's a lightning rod issue, right?
Right.
Second of all, and I know you've looked at the book, a big point that I make in there is we need to live in the tension of grace and truth.
Right.
And that makes people uncomfortable because everybody sides more with one, either on the grace side or the truth side. And it's easy to find a church that, is all quote-unquote grace and just says, it doesn't matter what you do, just come on over here. And it's easy to find a church where they say, we're all about the truth, and if you're not a member of the country club, you're not going to come here. It's much harder to say, I'm going to be like Jesus, who is described in John 1, 14 and 17, saying that he came full of grace and truth. And the great thing about living in the tension and saying that I'm not going to take sides, I am for both grace and truth, if you're on the grace side, living in the tension pulls you closer to the truth, and if you're on the truth side, living in the tension pulls you closer to grace, and you don't compromise either one.
You talk about saying yes to the mess, and really church is for messy people, and this is something, even when I was in New Jersey this week, we had one pastor, for example, he said, I had some prominent members of the homosexual community and they really appreciated the church, but when then one of them wanted to be baptized to make a public profession, that's where, it got a little more difficult. But back to your comment about Jesus, there were a number of people that Jesus interacted with that showed no commitment to him, or even if they were committed to him, had not left, quote, their lifestyle. Could be a tax collector, it could have been, a centurion, whatever it might be. And in your book, you spend a little bit of time talking about that, and we sort of forget that today because we do kind of enjoy our sanitized Christian experiences in church, don't we?
No, absolutely. And you look at Jesus, and Jesus had very firm biblical convictions, and at the same time, he had very deep relationships, and not only deep relationships with his disciples, and other people like Lazarus and Mary and Martha, but he also had good relationships with people who are not like him. And we're talking about the same Jesus who went to Matthew's tax collector's party, the same one who allowed a woman to anoint his feet and pour oil on him. We're talking about the same Jesus that forgave the adulterous woman and ate at Zacchaeus' house and talked to Roman soldiers, and let's just go on, right?
Mm-hmm. And you've got quite a list there, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I think you look at the religious leaders, and he interacted with people the religious leaders never would, who would say, stay away from them, they will corrupt you. And yet Jesus was able to interact and hold firm to their beliefs, because I think a lot of people change their beliefs. A lot of Christians will change their theological perspective on homosexuality, and because somebody they love comes out to them, and they don't know how to reconcile it, and they think, well, I've either got to alienate them and hang on to the truth and really ignore them and shun them and don't even eat with them, or I've got to just, change my worldview. And my argument is, no, you love them, like Jesus says in Matthew 5:38 through 48, like Paul says in Romans 12:9 through 18, you love them, but you hold firm to your convictions at the same time. You can do both.
And as I've said that before, we have a responsibility to have both our biblical convictions and our biblical compassion. And sometimes, churches that err on the biblical compassion and ignore the biblical convictions, a lot of those tend to be the liberal churches. And then, of course, you have the biblical convictions and no compassion, and those tend to be more like the fundamentalist churches. But those lines are blurring really quickly now with same-sex marriage and certain denominations saying, I don't have any problem marrying somebody of the same gender, and same-sex marriage is welcome in this church, while other churches in the same denomination say, wait a minute, we need to hold the line. So it seems to me that what you're talking about is certainly compassion, but as you talk about in one of your chapters, no compromise.
No, absolutely. Because, I spend the first 5 chapters of the book saying, building the case for grace. The love has no exception clause. It's like Paul says in Romans 2:4. It's God's kindness and patience that leads people to repentance. And if God's kindness leads to repentance, how much more should our kindness? But I tell you, there are 2 chapters that my friends who are LGBT are not big fans of in this book. And one chapter is chapter 6, which is no compromise. And another chapter is called Another Way, and it's a chapter on celibacy.
Celibacy, yeah.
And that's chapter 9. And, I think that some people, when they read the first 5 chapters, I might say, okay, this is just all grace, grace, grace. But, I try, and it's not a deep exegetical theological books like some, but I try in that chapter to lay out a simple case of why I believe that sexuality is defined as it is by the Bible.
Yes. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I certainly want to ask a few other obvious questions. One of those is you talk about pursuing relationships with the members of the LGBT community, and to really talk about what that really means. We'll get into that issue of compromise and also the issue of celibacy and just what a messy church looks like. So we're going to take a break, but if you'd like to join the conversation today, we'll certainly give you a place at the table, 1-800-351-1212. The book is entitled Messy Grace. It is published by Waterbrook Press. We have information about it on our website. You'll probably be able to find it in your local bookstore, but if not, you can order it right there. Once again, let me encourage you to go to also the website, pointofview.net. Watch the video. That gives you a chance to get to know Caleb a little better, to see him on screen, and it's a bit less than 3 minutes long. It's something I would encourage you, number 1, to watch, and number 2, to pass on to others. But if you'd like to join the conversation today, we welcome you. 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. We'll continue our conversation. Take your phone calls right after this.
Why does Kerby Anderson do what he does? Because he believes in God's ability to use you to make a difference.
There's a real need for us to articulate a responsible biblical perspective and to give people an understanding of what is happening in the world, and in addition to educating them, to then empower them to go out and make a difference for Christ.
Together we can push back the growing darkness. It's not going to be easy, but by God's grace, it is happening one person, one community at a time. Join us in this mission. Become a monthly partner. $1 a day, $30 a month will make a huge difference. Or perhaps you can do $100 a month. We need partners of all sizes. We need you. Give today online at pointofview.net. At the top of the page, next to the Donate Now button, click on Become a Monthly Partner. Pointofview.net. Mail your donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, or call 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Caleb Kaltenbach is with us as we talk about his book, Messy Grace. Just before I take some of those phone calls, Caleb, I did ask you about we should be pursuing relationships with members of the LGBT community. That's what you say in your book. I would imagine a lot of listeners would say, okay, I'm not even sure where I start. How do we even go about doing something like that?
I think there are some things that we need to realize. First of all, I would say that there's a difference between acceptance and approval. A lot of people think that, well, if I'm nice or if I'm kind or, if this person over here, if I treat them the same as I always have, they're going to think that I'm okay with it. And no, because I believe that we are to accept. And when I say accept, let me define that. I mean that on Sunday morning, anybody should be able to walk through my church doors and come in and listen to the gospel. We allow anybody to come in and do that. And I think Matthew 28:19, Jesus says, go into all the nations. So he's actually talking about that pursuit. But there's a difference between approval. You can accept someone as a person and a friend without approving of their life choice. I do it every Sunday when I shake hands with men that I know that have been probably looking at pornography or women that have been gossiping or people that are doing other things. I mean, we allow people into our doors who are making wrong life choices all the time. But there's a difference between acceptance and approval, and that means that we can be in a relationship with anyone. But at the same time, we need to treat them like people and not like projects. I think that there are a lot of Christians who want to try their new evangelistic ninja moves on people who are LGBT or even anybody, really, people who may not believe in Christ. And so I think that we build influence and trust with people when we treat them as an actual person. And when they meet, feel like it's their job to throw the Leviticus and the Corinthians, Genesis 19 and Ephesians 5 at them. And living, and it's a sin not to live holy lives. And we all struggle and fail, but we at least need to struggle and pursue holy living. But for somebody like my mom and dad, when they were in that life choice in those relationships, they saw identifying with the LGBT community as more their identity and less about their sexuality. My mom one time told me the last several years of her relationship with Vera, they weren't. So she still identified as a lesbian. I asked her why. She said, that's my community. Those are my friends. Those are the people that I love and know. I'm part of a cause and a movement. I said, you just described the church.
Yes.
She said, no, I didn't. Why would I go somewhere that would make me feel less about myself? And it came to me, Kerby, that it's about identity. And we see that with Bruce Jenner to Caitlyn Jenner. We see that with the lady up in the Northwest NAACP who said that she's African-American, but she's really Caucasian. But afterwards, she still says, I'm African-American because I identify that way. And so if somebody like my mom or dad said that the sexual intimacy and attraction is a smaller part of how to identify as LGBT, maybe we should spend more time getting to know them and their experiences and their stories, help them to make Christ their main identity, and then allow and trust that God is going to give margin, Kerby, for us to have those conversations about holy living when they do see what Christ is calling them to.
Again, the book is entitled Messy Grace. It's published by Waterbrook. And let's take some phone calls, 1-800-351-1212. Go to Kentucky first. Brenda, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. I know you want to share a story with us, so we're ready to listen.
Yes. I have a 24-year-old son, and he is homosexual. His father is homosexual. He lives in Arizona. I've seen him one time in 8 years, and I just want to know how I can help him. How can I witness to him? How should I be as a mother and a Christian at the same time?
Yeah, I hear that. And first of all, I want to say how sorry I am for the feelings and the emotions because this is real, right? I mean, you have so much love. You have so much love, and that's what makes this a difficult issue is, These are people that we really, really love in our lives. So if I can give you some advice, here's what I would tell you. You need to not look at it as your responsibility to change anyone's sexual orientation. Listen to me, God never calls you to change somebody from being gay to straight or anything else. Jesus is the one who is the expert at life change. And when I think about what you're describing, I think the best thing you can do is to love, is to be present, is to listen, and don't try to fix, don't throw out Bible verses because you already know that they know what the Bible says. But what you need to do is you need to be an example of love, and you need to build up that trust so that when life happens, and life happens to all of us, happens to Kerby all the time and me, he's going to need someone to turn to, and you want to be that individual, and you want to be seen as a safe place for him to be able to turn to, and you want to point him to Jesus, and you want to point him back to his faith, and you want to remind him about that. And I guarantee you that as he gets closer to that, you won't have margin to be able to talk about holy living. And I really believe that it's Christ in us that causes the life change. The best thing you can do is to love him, don't try to fix him, be present, and be a good listener.
Brenda, I really appreciate you sharing that. And let me just suggest, too, that you may be able to contact Caleb off air, because if you go to the website that we have there, messygrace.com, there's a contact point. And if you guys want to carry on that conversation or maybe get share, trade emails or something like that, you could do that as well.
Okay, that would be great.
Well, Brenda, I appreciate you calling. I know that's difficult to share that on the air. And Caleb, she represents, I'm sure, thousands of other mothers and fathers and other brothers and sisters and others that are saying, what do I say to a family member that says he or she is homosexual?
Yeah, and that's where I think that we need to own the fact that for them, somebody who identifies as LGBT, the word homosexual carries a lot of baggage. Mm-hmm. And that it's interpreted by even different people in that community to mean, different things. And again, the average Christian says, okay, it means having sex with someone of the same gender. And yes, that's what the Greek says. But at the same time, and that doesn't always mean that's not always what it means to somebody in that community. For them, it's tied up in relationships and help, and it's tied up in acceptance.
Right.
And I think the best thing we can do in many cases is to work on building that trust and being present. Like when I think about Jesus at Matthew's tax collector's party, I'm sure that Jesus was honest and truthful, but I'm willing to bet that the first thing he did was not go in there like a Pharisee. And I'm not saying any of our listeners are Pharisees. I'm just saying that the longer we're Christians, the more insider-focused we can get, and the more we want to present Scripture. I think that Jesus went in there and started relating with people because you see him doing that with other people as well.
Let's take another phone call. We'll head out to North Carolina this time. Don, you're on with Caleb Kaltenbach, and we're talking about the book, Messy Grace.
Yes, I haven't read the book, but I have read the book, and what I come across with was not an argument, but a conversation with a group of gay people that knew I was Christian, have been raised that way all my life. I'm from the Outer Banks, North Carolina, so you probably have a hard time understanding everything I say. But they said, you don't think a gay can be a Christian? And I said, no, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But a Christian cannot be a homosexual. And they stumbled on that when I said, let me go ahead and finish up what I'm going to say, and I won't say any more. That homosexuality is an abomination of the divine order that God set things. He made man and woman and told you to replenish the earth. Man and man can't do it. Woman and woman can't do it. Cats and dogs. I mean, it's all set in a divine order. God said it that way. It's got to be that way. And I pray every night for anybody who's a sinner But my goodness, let's face the facts. Like I said, yes, a homosexual can become a Christian, but a Christian cannot be a homosexual.
Let me take a break because we have one of those mandatory breaks coming up here, and then I'll get some comments from Caleb about that. And if you'd like to join the conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Just joined us. We're talking about the book Messy Grace, and we'll take a break and then take some more phone calls right after these important messages.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Caleb Kaltenbach with us for just a few more minutes as we talk about his book, Messy Grace. Don raised a very good question, obviously, that anyone can come to Christ and they don't have to clean themselves up and they don't have to become perfect to become Christians. But after you become a Christian, there is a sense of discipleship and a desire to please the Lord. But at the same time, we all still have our fallen natures. We still have temptations. So how do we sort some of that out after an individual accepts Jesus Christ?
Well, and I think that's just it, Kerby. I think that obviously you and I would both believe that God does keep our salvation secure, and at the same time, people who are saved produce fruit, right? So some people produce a lot of fruit, and some people get saved, but they still have some really prideful walls up, and some of those walls get broken down, but they may not grow as much in life as another person, but, they still have fruit. And I think that what our last listener said, I fully support biblically what he said. I just believe that when it comes down to just categorizing everybody as, I believe that any homosexual can be a Christian, but any Christian cannot be a homosexual. I think that we've got to kind of understand that this issue is a little bit deeper, because there are different types of people, just like there are different types of people who, quote-unquote, sin, right? So there's a difference between somebody who struggling with it, right? With any kind of, it could be any sin.
And they might even be practicing what you talk about in terms of celibacy, and that's very
is living a life, and they're struggling with it, right? With any kind of, it could be any sin.
And they might even be practicing what you talk about in terms of celibacy, and that's very different than somebody that, after they become a Christian, doesn't change their lifestyle, and they're going into gay bars and all sorts of things like that. I see a real difference there, don't you?
No, there's a huge difference, and there's a big difference between somebody who is saved, but sometimes they slip up, because we all slip up, and that doesn't mean that all of a sudden God yanks the salvation away, because all of us are going to sin, and sometimes we'll fall back into stuff. But I really believe that if you are saved, we will see fruit, and there's a big difference between somebody who says, I'm struggling with this, but I'm working hard to please God, and I'm really trying. And there's a difference between somebody like that versus somebody who says, I'm just going to live however I want, and I don't care what God says. And a young lady who attends our church, and she is, struggles with same-sex attraction and for any sin, right? I remember having a conversation with a young lady who attends our church, and she is, struggles with same-sex attraction. And, she's trying to live the life that God wants her to live, and sometimes she slips up, but I see her struggling like Jacob did. And I remember having a conversation with her, and she just started crying. And she said, you have no idea how much I've prayed, how much I've fasted, how many counseling sessions and seminars I've gone to. And she got mad, and she said, God still hasn't taken this away. Why not? And I said, the best theological answer I can give you is I don't know.
That's probably a fair one. Yeah.
But I do know this. I do know that Paul had his thorn, and he never got an answer. And I know that I have unanswered prayers. And I know that just because I feel one way does not give me license to live a way that God says not to live.
Yeah. Let's take another phone call if we can real quickly. I'll go to Texas, KJRT. Melissa, I think you have a question for Caleb. You're on.
Yes. I know an individual who we've known them since childhood. My family has, and I taught this person in Sunday school. They've professed to be a Christian, and they've even felt called into the ministry. But they have recently, in the past couple of years, come out as gay. They're actually best friends with one of my close family members. And, we try to be there for this person. And with that lifestyle, there's a lot of drama and, in this person's case, promiscuity going on, and with partners and different things like that. And there's even financial. It's getting into all areas of this person's life. What we're having difficulty with in being there for that person, we're getting a lot of details about the life that this person is living, and it's really hard being a Christian to balance that. We don't want to get sucked. Not that we would get sucked into it, but do you understand what I'm asking? How do you continue to be there for that person, but yet draw the line and say, I cannot listen to this. I don't need to know that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And one of our other callers, which probably won't be able to get on, calling from Kansas, want to know, what about family pictures and having people over and participating in weddings? I mean, this is why I think your book, as well as the book by Sean McDowell and John Stonestreet on same-sex marriage, kind of answers some of those practical questions. But do you have a short answer before we run out of time today?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what she's struggling with, but I mean, my short answer is that yes, I think that we should have somebody over for dinner, and yes, I do believe that we should listen and we should be there. And a lot of society gets mad now when it comes to, quote-unquote, a marriage only defined as being between a man and a woman. And it almost seems cruel to say that this is the only way. But yet, there's a lot of struggle and pain that can be avoided if people would just listen to what God has in His principles for holy living. And unfortunately, our culture sees sex as a benefit for individuals, and it's not. And God set it up as a foundation for one of our social structures. And when we see it as a benefit and not a foundation, I think that, sexuality becomes selfish and it becomes extremely manipulative. We do have to have lines. We do have to say, you know what, with some of the intimate details of your love life or something like that, I really don't want to hear that. I mean, I don't know about you, Kerby. I wouldn't want to hear it from a heterosexual either.
Yeah, that's the way I would draw the line. Yeah, and I think that's sometimes the help to say there's nothing sort of unique about homosexuality in the sense that if somebody's a heterosexual and starts telling me about their affairs or something, I don't want to hear that either. And before I run out of time, I just really do commend to some of our listeners who were not able to get through or only got a partial answer. I mean, you have really, in this book, dealt with some things that churches are going to have to deal with. What if you have an individual, for example, that's openly gay? Can he go to a men's retreat? And what about supportive of those kind of individuals? And could an LGBT couple go to a community group? And, where do you draw the line in terms of baptism and membership and just all sorts of questions? So this is the kind of book I would want to put in the hands of every pastor, and also in the hands of anyone that has a gay friend, neighbor, coworker, family member, whatever, that they're trying to think through. And because you sort of live that life, you are kind of light years ahead of a lot of individuals, and you have just a lot of great wisdom in the book. So I just really commend it to individuals. And Caleb, again, we have a link to your website, which people can go to. It is messygracebook.com. There's a contact point there. There's speaking, where individuals might want to have you come and speak. And, of course, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we've got a video so people can watch that and learn a little bit more about you and get some understanding of this issue. So I appreciate you taking the time not only to write the book, but thank you for giving us an hour today here on Point of View.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for having a radio show that deals with grace and truth like this.
Again, it's always important to balance our biblical convictions and our biblical compassion. Grace and truth, those are all issues that we want to address. And again, I think this is a book that you would really want to have on your shelf. If you're a pastor, I can't imagine that you wouldn't want to have this. It is endorsed by a lot of pastors, including Jack Graham, I mentioned just a minute ago, pastor of Prestonwood Baptist Church, and all sorts of seminary professors like people like Darrell Bach, as well as individuals that have written on this issue of homosexuality, same-sex marriage, like Sean McDowell. And these are endorsements, I think, illustrate what a great book it is and why you need to know more about it. All the information you need to know is on the website, pointofview.net. I think we'll probably come back to this issue in the future, but since the book's just out, I wanted you to know about it. I would encourage you to read it, and we'll bring him back to talk about some of this and more in the future. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your healthcare. For your free information guide, call 855-87-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical healthcare. Call 855-87-BIBLE. That's 855-87-BIBLE.
Take Kerby and the Truth Team with you wherever you go. You can listen, you can read, you can watch. Visit the Apple or Google Play Store and download the free Point of View radio app. Get it today, the Point of View radio app. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. Second hour today, we're going to spend some time talking about the prison system again and what we can do as Christians to make a positive difference. For those of you that listen to this program, you know, just a few weeks ago, we had in studio Gene Getz and Bob Kulick, and we talked about Malachi Dads. We also had Gene Getz talk about his newly revised edition of The Measure of a Man, and I brought in the old original copy of that back from the 1970s. And we want to bring a couple other voices to you as well, but I'll bring back one familiar voice. Bob Kulick's still with us. And Bob, I think we've had a great discussion about how we as Christians can make a positive impact in the prisons. And I appreciate your conversation with us a couple of weeks ago.
Happy to be here again. Thank you very much.
Let me introduce people around the round table. First of all, we are privileged to have with us in studio Alex Yim, and he has retired from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He served there 32 years and ended his career as division chief. Then a little bit later, he was asked to be on the board of Awana Lifeline. And then I've seen this happen before, because I've sat on some boards where then they say, well, could you be the executive director? In this case, he's the national director of Awana Lifeline, and it is just a privilege to have you in studio with us today.
Pleasure to be here also. Thank you.
Also, a name that we mentioned last time, and he's in studio with us as well, and that is Mike Broyles, who really is dedicated to bringing the gospel message and really has been really helping to spread some of these. I'll hold these up right now for those of you watching online. Malachi Dads, as well as Hannah's Gifts, and we have some of those resources available, and we want to talk about that as well. So, Mike, thank you for joining us as well.
Great to be with you, Kerby, and your listeners. Thank you.
Talk just briefly, if you might, about this ministry that you have in the prisons, because I have said that it's good for prison members and certainly those who are incarcerated, but I think these are so well written that you could use these in churches as well, couldn't you?
Yes, I'm a local church pastor for over 40 years in family ministries. Thus, I was always looking for good materials, especially for men or women, to assist them in their walk with Christ. So the tools that we have, particularly the ones from Dr. Gene Getz, are great assistance to local church leaders and men and women's groups.
Well, again, I think those are some things we'll talk more about in just a minute. But Alex, to give us a little bit of an overview on Awana, I think most of our listeners are familiar with Awana, but maybe not, or what exactly is taking place with Awana Lifeline right now.
Well, you know, I spent the first 24 years of my career on the Sheriff's Department thinking I could arrest and incarcerate and warehouse folks out of the criminal problem in America, crime problem in America. But I finally realized after getting assigned to the jail system that you need to program a certain population, a low-risk population. And I think what the program that really puts it over the top is anything that has Jesus Christ in it.
Right.
That's what makes it a success. We've had programs, vocational programs, life skills programs in our correctional environments for many, many years. And yet the recidivism stays very, very high. But when you add that Christ component, it's just a home run. And the transformation, the redemption, and the hope that's given to these, I can't even call them inmates anymore, students,
right,
is tremendous.
Well, and again, they have an opportunity to study things like the heart of a man and the heart of a father. Some of them have an opportunity to actually get like a seminary-like degree, do they not, in terms of that? So this is changing not only their attitudes, but even their situation. And of course, some of them are incarcerated for life, so they'll never get out, but many of them will get out, and that is an opportunity for them to do ministry as well.
Right. The reentry process does start on the very first day they hit the jails. And if you can separate them from the general population, if they're willing to take these programs, and then you introduce them to the gospel of Jesus along with the other programs. It's just, again, it's a winning formula that's often overlooked, but yet it's right there in front of us.
Mike, do you have some stories about what you've seen happen in some of these occasions? Because I know you're really strong on these teaching programs, but what kind of stories are you hearing coming out of the prisons right now?
Well, one story that comes to mind is two young men, 18, 19, 20 years old. They were, Alex and I come from Los Angeles, so this is out of LA County jails.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of those young men literally murdered this other young man's brother.
Wow.
I was at a Malachi Dad graduation. It was a point of celebration of these men finishing and completing our course. And the leader introduced me to these two young men. They were about 2 feet in front of me, Kerby. And they began to tell me this story of murder. And I didn't see anger and bitterness in the eyes of the other gentleman who had a brother murdered. And I said, what's going on in your hearts?
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys really feel? And the gentleman who had a brother murdered said, I'm a Christ follower now, Mike, and I have forgiven that gentleman. I have forgiven him. We were in rival gangs for years. Now I sleep on the top bunk. He sleeps on the bottom bunk. And now the gangs are persecuting us inside the jail because there's unity and grace and love from rival gangs, and only Jesus Christ can pull that one off.
Well, I certainly agree. You know, I just think about that, Alex. This is so, as you said, we have all sorts of self-help programs, but something very unique about the gospel and something very unique about pulling together these kinds of materials and providing an opportunity for these men and women to learn a little bit more about the Bible and to begin to apply that to their lives.
Right, exactly. And, you know, even to the unchurched community, in law enforcement and others, we're in the business of making moral people. And how you gain morality, a certain level of morality, is in the quickest way is through religion.
Yes.
And so offering this program as on a voluntary basis, we didn't exclude other religions, but they readily access these programs, and I saw the transformation. In fact, I shared with them the greatest transformation was me. I went from literally almost hating them, wanting to take them to jail, wanting to take their freedom away, and became a person who recognized very clearly that the grace of God, the forgiveness of God, extends to them also, because God saved the world, right? He
certainly did. Bob, I think these are just good examples of testimonies we're going to hear all through the hour here. But again, thank you for connecting us up to some of these individuals.
Yeah, no, it was very important for them to come in, because I thought when Dr. Getz and I were on 2 weeks ago, just laying the groundwork for it, but this is the heart of it. This is the crux of it. So I'm very glad they were able to come out here from L.A. on the 5 a.m. flight to get here.
We got them off of the airplane, fed them some barbecue, and we got them around the table here. So let me take a break, and if you'd like to join us, those of you that have already heard some of the conversation, maybe this is familiar territory, we'll cover some of it again, but I've had a chance over the years to know that many of you are involved in prison ministry and love to know what you are doing in your locale, maybe what you are doing through your church, or if you have some comments or questions about what you could do and how you could develop it. Because one of the challenges, Bob, we had last time is to encourage other individuals in other states to consider what they might do. We've told some stories about Texas. We've told some stories about Louisiana. Of course, we're going to hear some about California. And those are all places where we broadcast. But we broadcast in 42 different states. So that's only 3 out of 42. So we need to pick up a few more. And I'd love to know what you're doing, or if you have some comments or questions about what you could do. I do believe that every church should have some kind of prison ministry, and there's some great opportunities for you to be involved, but you can learn from some of these experts around the table if you'd like to join us. So 1-800-351-1212. Give us a call, 1-800-351-1212. We'll talk more about Malachi Dads as well as Hannah's Gift. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
How bad is the economy? Many people believe it is still in bad shape. Others don't see a problem. They point to a low unemployment rate, record corporate profits, and a booming stock market. The difference in perspective is explained in a recent column on why this feels like a depression for most people. It begins with this simple observation. Everyone has seen the pictures of the unemployed waiting in soup lines during the Great Depression. When you try to tell a propaganda-believing, willfully ignorant, mainstream media-watching, math-challenged consumer that we're in the midst of a greater depression, they act as if you've lost your mind. During the Great Depression, there were as many as 12 million Americans unemployed. These were the men pictured in the soup lines. Today, they are essentially invisible. There are 46 million Americans in an electronic soup line. That 46 million are on food stamps and are hidden from our view. Let's look at it another way. There are 251 million Americans of working age and about 149 are employed. That means that only 59% of Americans of working age actually work. This is a much lower percentage than it was during the Great Depression. The author concludes that for the average American family, the U.S. economy has been in recession since 2000, with the Greater Depression arriving in 2008. Although the working age population has grown by 40 million since 2000, only 12 million jobs were added during that time. Most of these new jobs are in the government-controlled health, education, and social services sectors. Millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs disappeared during that same period. That is why it feels like a depression for so many people. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Provident Films, Woodlawn, the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city. Woodlawn, in theaters now.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back once again, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Thought we spent a few minutes talking about how we can bring the gospel message to inmate fathers and mothers and others. And so, Mike, let me come to you for just a minute because we have mentioned this before, but I thought it'd be good to go through it again. There is a series here, and again, I'll hold them up for anybody watching online, Malachi Dads, and you have part 1 and 2, The Heart of a Man, and also The Heart of a Father. Then we'll talk about the one for the women. But this is a program that you can implement in any of the prisons. Of course, you could have it in your own church. And there's an opportunity to learn some basic principles. And then sometimes they'll have an experience like this one from Angola, which we'll talk more about in just a minute. Then you have some key applications, some prayers, some illustrations, and then even some verses to memorize. And so all of that comes together in a very simple format. So talk about how you are right now trying to get this into other prisons around the country.
Yeah, thanks, Kerby, for that question. And Malachi Dads, Hannah's Gift, both curriculums are really led by lay people. This is not to exclude the seminary or the pastor student, but it's lay oriented. So it's written for the person who is learning about Christ and learning about God's Word for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what you and I and many would call, this is basic Christianity. Malachi Dads and Hannah's Gift is really about 3 key components in the curriculum-wise. It's about how to be a godly man or how to be a godly woman. We tell the inmates around the country in about 20 that you cannot be a godly father or mother till you're a godly man or a woman. Mm-hmm. So the emphasis of the curriculum is is your character and your walk with Christ and how to come to Christ. In the heart of a father, there's even a lesson on sin for one lesson, and salvation is another lesson, and then sanctification. And it's interactive in its nature. This is not one man or woman talking to 30 inmates. This is built around 8 or 10 men or women and a facilitator or two who will assist the inmates to study the Bible through the study questions out of Malachi Dad's and Hannah's gift. Thus, it's discovering God's Word together, and then the facilitators keep you on track and assist you to look up the Scriptures, because some of the people, many of the people that come to Malachi Dad's and Hannah's gift have really never touched a Bible before.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a introductory of Christianity in Christ. And thus, when you come to Christ, then we teach how to walk in Christ. And then specifically, we talk about the mothering, how to be a godly mother while you're on the inside, or a godly father on the inside.
Yes. Just an hour ago, we had a guest on. He was saying the first time he went to a Bible study, they were supposed to be reading from 1 Corinthians, but he's reading from 1 Chronicles. So they're reading about what Paul says, and he's talking about impaling somebody. Yes. And if they say, what, Caleb, where are you looking right now? And so, again, we have to recognize that sometimes this is the first experience, their first touch to Christianity. What kind of difficulties do you run into? You would think that maybe some wardens would say, well, I don't want any of that Christianity stuff here. But are you finding an open door?
In many places, we do have an open door, Kerby, but they don't normally look us in the eye and say, you can't come in.
Yeah.
Because that's not politically correct. It's not the right way to do it. They know that. But what they can do if they're not for us, they just make the bureaucracy hard for the volunteer to come in.
I see. Yeah.
Thus, paperwork takes more time, and there's more issues, and security checks seem to go over the top. So for the warden who really is positive and wants us, and we have many non-Christian wardens who we serve with, they're more neutral. They see the value of better behavior, less crime, less fighting, less disruption. Thus, there's a cost effect to them of less security needed. So we'd say many of the wardens are for us, many of the security people, but there are some that just kind of drag their feet, make it more difficult.
Alex, what about that? You've worked in the prison system, at least looking at some of that, and been in the sheriff's department. You kind of recognize some of the limitations. So what would you suggest to listeners right now that say, I would really like to minister in the prisons? I believe that's what we're commanded in Scripture to do. And I'm not quite sure how to do that. Are there some do's and don'ts, some things to do and things to avoid?
Well, first of all, while you were talking to Mike, and Mike was telling you about the bureaucracy and those administrators that would tell you no just because that's all they knew was no. I was one of those individuals until the Lord got a hold of my heart, and I saw the value of these programs. Don't believe the media. Don't believe the media. There's nothing more rewarding than the mission field of a prison or jail. Because once Jesus gets a hold of these individuals' hearts, you will never be the same. They'll never be the same, but you will never be the same. And so, in my advice to the administrators, give it a chance. It's a very scalable program, and it provides a safer jail for your personnel.
Sure.
Again, fiscally, it's responsible because it doesn't cost anywhere close to some of the programs that they're paying for now. Also, down the road, I'm an optimist. And I think recidivism and lower crime rates in the community will result. Good. We had a rule of thumb in LA County. One burglar committed 25 burglaries before they got arrested, got caught. 75 before they ever did any jail time. So if we could potentially save 75 victims from having their houses burglarized by changing one person, we've really got to commit heart surgery around these people, get that heart change done, and send these people out knowing Christ. And so when they hit the streets, they're a better father, better mother, but better citizen also.
Yeah. I won't get too political here, but if I ever could have Senator Bernie Sanders sitting across from us, one of the things he likes to say is we have so many people in the prisons. And the first thing I'd say is, well, if you want to have fewer in the prisons, how about have more gospel programs in the prison?
Exactly.
He wouldn't see that one coming, but that's exactly the case. I mean, if you really are concerned about so many people that are incarcerated, then maybe we need to come up with a program to make sure that they don't return back as soon as we let them out. So that's important. Bob, you've got some great stories about this as well, don't you?
Just in talking about what I've seen so far with my work on this is three problems that arise: lack of belief, lack of understanding, and lack of funds. And belief is that they don't believe that this has such a dramatic effect in the prisons. So getting out the stories of Angola and other places, we've got some in Texas and now into the Chicago area and soon to be Minneapolis and things like that. They can see what's being done in there. That's one issue. Lack of understanding. I talked to a guy at the Rochester Federal Medical Center for quite a while about this, and he said, seems like a good idea, seems like a good program. I got him the books, and yesterday we had a conversation, and he's like, yeah, I read through them. It makes sense. I understand this. I've got volunteers ready to sit down. We're having a conference call with them tomorrow to implement this in the Federal Medical Center up there. And then lack of funding. Like Chief Yim said, that's one of the things that their first, second, third question is, was it cost, and was it cost? And the cost of this is negligible, if anything. In some cases, you can get it in there without any cost, and so once those three items are taken care of, there's no stopping it.
Well, and you told the story last time about actually being able to give a diploma, if you will, to individuals that are graduate. You have now some that are studying basically seminary level programs.
Right. Exactly. Right. Down in Angola, there's a seminary on site there. Mm-hmm. We also have Dayspring Seminary up in Chicago that has, through some generous donations of people, have made it possible. Now they've offered 3 scholarships to 2 guys in Rochester Federal Medical Center and 1 in Leavenworth to pursue a seminary degree. So exciting.
Let's take a break. When we come back, let's take some of your phone calls. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We're supposed to visit those in prisons, right? Isn't that what the scriptures say? Exactly. And so here is a ministry that we have made available to you. If you'd like to join the conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Some calls coming in, but I'd certainly love to hear from you. Perhaps you already have tried something and maybe have a success story. Maybe others are saying, okay, you've convicted me. There's something we need to do in our church, but I don't really need to get or know even how to get started and what I need to do in order to make that happen. So we certainly want to talk about that. And if you would like some more information, you can click on the pictures that we have of Mike and Alex, and that will take you to awanalifeline.org. As you go there are some of the programs, the products, media, a way to get involved, how you can contact them, and much more. So those are already up online, and I would encourage you to go and find some of that information and pass it on to others that might need to know about that. You may be listening right now and say, well, my pastor needs to know about that. I hope he listens to the program. I got a better idea. Why don't you pass the link on to him, or even take the podcast or the livecast and send it to him to listen to or watch. When we come back, we're going to take some phone calls. We've got some of you that actually work in various jails, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. And you have a round table of experts. So if you have any questions, I think they can answer them. We'll be right back.
This is an on-the-go world, and now wherever you go, Point of View goes with you. Visit the Apple or Google Play Store and download the free Point of View app. You can listen and watch the program live or play it again later. Get Kerby's Viewpoints commentary and click the Take Action link to make a difference in the world. You can also read articles, find a local radio station, and easily contact us with your comments or questions. Again, visit the Apple or Google Play Store today and get the app, the Point of View radio app. And one more thing, if you like it, click that button that says Donate Now and join the team. Point of View and the Point of View app, with you on the go.
From PureFlix Entertainment and Provident Films comes Woodlawn. Witness the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city.
I'm asking you right now to stand up and make a decision.
Woodlawn. Experience one hope, one truth, and one way. Starring Academy Award winner Jon Voight and Sean Astin. Woodlawn. In theaters now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation about the prison system, and if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Mike Broyles, Alex Yim, and Bob Kulik with us, and we are talking about Malachi Dads. In a minute, we'll talk about Hannah's gift, but also want to take some phone calls, so let's head out to Florida first. Daniel, I believe you actually have been teaching in the prison system or in jails. Tell us more about that.
Kerby, thank you for taking my call. Yeah, I'm a teacher, and I work with juveniles that are being tried as adults in the system, and so I talk to them about the Lord all the time on the fly, I guess you would say. But I'd like to talk with them in deeper conversations, like after work. And I was just wondering if your guest has ever experienced a situation where maybe a teacher would go in after hours as a volunteer, speaking with the same students that he works with during the day.
Well, I think you answered your question. I think clergy, volunteer clergy.
Yes.
Okay, so I would leave your official capacity at work and then turn around in the parking lot and come in as a volunteer if the department would accept that agreement.
Well, it's kind of strange because I'm considered a volunteer, although I'm paid by the county as a teacher. But while I'm working, I'm considered a volunteer. And so, I need to find out if I can get in with that same badge in the evening time as well, and what the parameters would be, for being open about my faith.
Oh, exactly. And, first of all, I want to thank you for your servant's heart for doing what you do. But again, you've got to make it clean. And I think once you leave your official job during the day, and then there's that defined line, and you come back as a clergy, a volunteer, I think all bets are off. Then you can share the gospel as much as you want.
Right. Well, I appreciate you guys with all the information. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And let me, for just a few minutes, maybe talk about if people want to get some of these resources. Alex, since you were talking, let me ask you, because we are encouraging people to visit that website. And again, if they click on your picture right there, that will take them, or Mike's picture, to awanalifeline.org. But talk about what is available on the website and how you can use some of these resources.
Well, Kerby, I'm going to defer to Mike. I work for Mike. He's the executive director of Awana Lifeline, and I'm just the, I guess, pretty face on the front of the camera.
Okay, Mike, I'll turn it over to you, but I thought I would get a few of you to talk about how you can use some of these resources. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. You can go to awanalifeline.org, and there's a little button on the top that says Shop. So Malachi Dad's, Hannah's Gift, all the resources will be on there. And we even have some now in Spanish if you're in need of a Spanish-speaking person or reader. So awanalifeline.org, do shop, and the materials, all the materials will be there. I just want to make mention of one of the materials. Psalm 1 is on there. It's a small Bible study booklet. It's only about 6 weeks long and 6 studies. But the beautiful thing of this, it's written by lifer inmates from Angola State Prison.
Wow.
In other words, they will never get out. They are the leadership team of Malachi Dad's in Angola State Prison. And I went to Mr. Burrow Kane, the warden, and asked for permission. You got to do that. And that leadership team wrote a Bible study called Psalm 1. And for our last listener, Daniel in Florida, if you're still with us, Daniel, that would be one that you could even use with the juveniles that you're going in with.
Very good, yes.
And this would be a great introduction to those young adults, particularly, or adults who are at risk in your local church, that are on the edge. And it's I think it's on our website, and I think it's about $5, so it's very economical. But the uniqueness is it's written by godly Christian Malachi Dad leaders who, by the way, are also called pastors.
Might just mention, too, and I just clicked on your products here, you also have posters to promote this. You have these gift certificates of completion and all sorts of other things. So this really is a turnkey operation. If somebody in a church right now says, this is something I'd like to develop, you give them just virtually all the resources. They don't have to create very much, do they?
No, they don't. And in each of our Malachi and Hannah gift books, in the back of it, there's assistance for the facilitator for every chapter that goes through, and it helps them in forming questions. Again, we're not a lecture-based thing. Mm-hmm. We're not against having a lecture out of the scriptures, obviously, but we're more of a discussion base. So at the end of the books, there's some helps for the facilitators to make it smooth. And if you call or write AwanaLifeline.org and the number's there, then if you need assistance in starting a program in your church or your community, in your jail, or assistance, someone will respond back to you, and you will get a kind of a coaching of how to get this started in your community or jail or prison.
Just a minute, I want to get back to some of the phone calls, but since you mentioned Hannah's Gift, we've done very good over the last two programs, I'd say, talking about Malachi's dads. And, of course, we recognize a lot of those who are incarcerated are men, but what about the women? You mentioned that you have this kind of facilitator's guide in the back, but what is available there for those that would like to minister to women in the prisons?
Yes, we have two studies, about 12 weeks each. They're written by a lady named Dr. Christy Miller. Mm-hmm. Christy Miller, PhD in Hebrew from New Orleans Theological Seminary. She's very smart, but she's got that side of her what I call just a very compassionate woman. So her leadership and skills, she's the author of Hannah's Gift, The Heart of a Mother, and that's based on 1 Samuel, chapters 1, 2, and 3. And then the second book is Family Restoration, and it's how to restore your relationship as a person to a family member. So to tell you a little brief story, Kerby, on family restoration, this is targeted towards women, obviously. And so I had some men pick this book up, and they kept telling me, how come we don't have that? We need family restoration. So we hired a professional Christian writer who would put this in masculine terms, and that's going to be out in about 30 days. So we'll have one family restoration for the women, and then we'll have one for the men eventually here.
Let me just again mention Daniel's off the line, but again, this one's Psalm 1, also a forward by Warden Burl Keynes. I thought that's pretty powerful, and hold that up there as well. Let's take another phone call. Head out to California this time, KYCC. And Kevin, you have the floor. What would you like to ask?
Yes, our church is involved in Awana. We have a unique program as well, too, for the high school kids. The student population of the high school is probably around 600 students, and we offer one free lunch a week. It's called our Thursday lunch program, and it's just a great chance for the kids to come in and have a short devotional, and we've been doing it for a number of years now, but we typically see about 150 students a week, and it's crazy to see a quarter of the student population walking up and down the street going to lunch at a church. It's a really good outreach. And that's just something that our church has done without any formal program necessarily. But I do have a question regarding prison ministry in the state of California with the laws changing as much as they have. I know years ago my father used to be involved in the Match 2, the M2 program, and I know that doesn't exist anymore. But is there a program within California that already exists for someone to volunteer in a prison ministry?
Any help? Yeah.
Chief?
Yeah, we're in the state of California state prison systems, and we have Malachi dads in probably 4 or 5 state prisons. And so, yes, sir, you can just use that Awana line or email, and I will respond to you personally, Kevin. And then we can talk personally where you live and how close you might be to one of our state prisons. We're just talking to officials and wardens out in Chino, California, that we hope to start Malachi Dads in the next few months. So we'd love to have a conversation with you. Thank you for your openness to even consider it.
We'll take a break, but let me again point you to awanalifeline.org. And again, you just have to click on the picture either of Alex or Mike, and that will take you right there. And then once you're there, you can hit that contact or connect with us, and then you can interact and get a personal response. Let's take a break. We'll take some more phone calls. 1-800-351-1212. We'll be back right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. If you'd like to join us, we might be able to slip in one more phone call, 1-800-351-1212. But I wanted to, first of all, talk about the opportunity. And, Mike, this is something to think about. We do, from time to time, hear of prison riots. We hear of other cutbacks in funding. It seems to me that some of these problems are a real opportunity for the gospel, don't you think?
Yes, they are. I would encourage the listeners, the Christ followers, as in your community, in your state, as you hear this over the news, as you observe, to obviously pray for those situations where there's crisis in a prison or a crisis in a state or a county budget-wise. We see that as an opportunity to step through and to be the model of Christ to the people inside, both in the county and in the state and in the federal systems. I believe the Church of Jesus Christ, because of the crisis we're in America, and just the $1 billion a year on the state prisons alone.
Wow.
And thus we can never really keep up with that rate. And so faith-based programs, ministries like Awana, Lifeline, Malachi Dad's Hannah's Gift can step in at no cost to the state and thus begin healing and transformation and thus cut the cost, hopefully, of the state budget through less security and other things of that nature.
I would certainly say so. Let's see if we can go through some of the resources before we run out of time, because you mentioned one that we didn't talk about last time we were on, and that is this one, Psalm 1, the Blessed Man. As you mentioned just a minute ago, Daniel calling in, and I'm sure other listeners could say, this would work at any age, right? And
yes.
So this would be one that I think everybody would want to get a copy of. And again, this was put together, interestingly enough, by the Malachi Dads at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, and you have the foreword, again, by Warden Burl Cain. Tell us a little bit more. I think this is just something that a lot of individuals are going to want to take advantage of, don't you think?
Yes, sir. There's many in Angola State Prison. There's over 6,000 inmates. There's been hundreds of those inmates over the last few years who have memorized Psalm 1. So I went and asked if they would write this, and at the end of each little chapter of Bible study, there's a testimony of an inmate reflecting a testimony related to that verse in Psalm 1. It's a beautiful testimony, and I think it's a point of entry of conversations in the Bible. I mentioned that so many of our inmates don't know the Bible at all, don't touch the Bible. I would say in L.A. County, where I work a lot, over 50% of the inmates have never touched the Bible, much less picked up that Bible and read it. Psalm 1 is a great start. We see this as an introduction to Malachi Dads. It's short, compact, and for you who are local church leaders like youth pastors, young adult leaders in the church today, that's a great conversation around Psalm 1.
One other one is this DVD, which we haven't yet really talked much about as well, and this is actually put together, as I understand it, by some of the inmates, and it's an opportunity for them in 40 minutes or so to really begin to challenge this whole idea of developing this program, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And this comes out of our curriculum, Heart of a Father, of Malachi Dads. And this is 3 inmates. These are Malachi Dad graduates. These are leaders of Malachi Dads at Angola State Prison. And they will never get out of prison. They have life sentences.
Yes.
They don't have any chance to appeal that process in the state of Louisiana. Thus, we have them talk to other inmates in this DVD. They talk directly of how to be a godly man while you're in for life. And then most of all, they talk about how to be a godly father and reconnect with your children. So these are godly men. These are my friends. And when we go into prisons or jails, this is a tool you can use that will relate to the inmate population better than any outsider, because it's inmates for life talking to other inmates.
Yes. And again, there's the Malachi Dads, Heart of a Man, Heart of a Father, and of course, as we mentioned, Hannah's Gift. one on the heart of a mother and family restoration. And not to leave out the dads, there's going to be a family restoration one for them pretty soon. So quite a lot of great resources. Let me go around the round table real quick. I get so many final comments just before we run out of time. And Alex, just been great to have you here and to have somebody who's been in the police and the sheriff's department and in the kind of area of law enforcement, but now to be working in this area. It's just a delight to have you join us today. But any challenge you might give to our listeners before we run out of time?
Real quick, when I was working for LA County, I asked Mike constantly for something that we could share with our high power population.
Sure.
Maybe the lower acuity level, mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people that weren't getting training. And, oftentimes as a jail administrator, prison administrator, you're going to get criticized for not offering that type of training to those populations. Psalm 1 is your answer.
That's great.
It's something that could be utilized, that you could drop off to these individuals and they can do really on their own. And the reason I'm here, again, I've got to thank the Lord for again, changing my heart. I'm the transformation story.
Yes.
I really, truly believe in this faith-based programming, Christ-based programming in the jail environment. And, again, that's the answer. That's the answer we're all looking for. Let's get off the bench. Let's get onto the playing field, and let's start it nationwide and redefine incarceration.
Yeah. Bob, I just appreciate you making this possible. You're with us with Gene Getz, and that was a great conversation, but thank you for making this possible. But any last challenge for some of our listeners here, what you'd encourage them to do? Maybe to follow your lead, and that is to recognize that you're in the second half of your life and saying, I'm not going to retire. There's a whole sort of ministry out here that I can do.
Right. I think it's just being open to God's call, too, because this is not anything I would have gotten involved in on my own. I never thought I would be doing this, and here I am. And I find that I'm using a lot of the resources I used in business and in growing a business to say, I'm going to do the same thing there. Just don't let a closed door be the end of the answer, the final answer. You just keep finding a door until you can get through there, because like I said, this is a fantastic program, and we've seen it work in so many different places that it's worth the fight.
Well, Mike, thank you for joining us, and Alex, thank you for joining us as well. Let's one last time talk about what is available on the website, because we do have those links. And again, just click on there. It takes you to awanalifeline.org. And if they want to communicate with you, Mike, they can hit that Connect With Us button. If they want some of the products, they go to the store and the products, and they can find everything that they need right there.
Great. Yeah. We'd love to be in contact with you, and we'd love to mobilize church leaders. I was a pastor for 40 years in family ministries, and I want to say there's low-flying fruit in the prisons and jails. Many of the men and women are broken. They know they're broken, and they need a Savior, and we need to be there ready to instruct and to teach from God's Word. So please contact. Please let us know of your interest. We want to mobilize your people to serve Christ in your local jail or prisons.
As Alex said, you not only transform them, you transform yourself. And such a great story as well. That's all we have for today, but please take the time. We have all the links necessary. If you find yourself saying, okay, I know some people that need to know this. We have a podcast, and in just a few minutes, you'll be able to send that podcast to anybody that might want to listen to that. Or, of course, maybe they'd like to watch the roundtable here, and you can go to our YouTube channel and get the Livecast and send that on as well. Please take the time to educate others that need to know about this. And if you want to put that on your link to your Facebook page or your Twitter feed, or maybe you have a blog post or something like that, take the time to multiply this, because we certainly do need to minister to those in prison. Well, tomorrow we have our weekend edition. Kelly Shackelford will be back with us of Liberty Institute. Debbie Georgiadis, talk show host and author of her latest book, will be with us as well. And Paul Diamond will be with us. You might remember him. He is one of the leading barristers, perhaps the leading barrister in England, and has really fought some of these religious liberty issues. And it's always good to have him in studio to tell us what's happening in England and to warn us that our country does not go down some of those same roads. So I hope you will join us then. I want to thank Andrew, Catherine, Shamila, Chris, and everybody who's been involved in this broadcast. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-87-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-87-BIBLE. That's 855-87-BIBLE.
A big thank you to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.